Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Liv, this is Benny, but apologies for any disappointment. I'm going to be the one that teaches you how to do a downward facing dog. So first things first, downward facing dog is one of the most important yoga postures where a good grippy mat is most important because our feet and hands are essentially going to be pushing in opposite directions. If we're on a slippy surface, our feet and hands are just going to slide away. We won't be able to get that traction, that tension, that grip in order to push our body into the posture and find that stretch and engagement that we need. Therefore, if you don't have a grippy mat, that's going to be your first hurdle and something that you'll feel a lot of benefit from when you upgrade to a grippy mat. On the same topic of grip, socks. As much as I love to wear socks to keep my feet warm for yoga, they're not going to help you either. So get rid of the socks. Now that we've given ourselves our best chance of being able to achieve a downward dog, what's the purpose of it? The primary purpose is to strengthen our shoulders, lengthen out our spine, so sort of elongate our spine, and then of course stretching through the back of the legs as well. Not to be confused for, it's only to be stretching the back of the legs, and we'll get to the alignment in a moment. So setting up for your down dog, how do you know how to get into it? Draw yourself into a tabletop, so tabletop being this nice square shape where shoulders are over wrists and hips are right over knees. And then from there, with the toes untucked to begin with, you can sort of see the distance that you will want your down dog to be. Tuck the toes under, think of lifting the knees first, sit bones go high to the sky and then thighs press backwards as we come to this upside down V shape. Now the distance between hands and feet here is a rough rule of thumb. It's not to say that you now have to leave your hands and feet there. Some people might find it a little bit more comfortable to let the feet move ever so slightly backwards. So now that we've found the distance between hands and feet, we want to figure out what we should be doing with the rest of the body in that distance. So looking at the upper body first, shoulders. It's a shoulder strengthener, but we want to make sure that we are staying very stable in our shoulder joint. This means we want our shoulder blades to be broad across our upper back. So we're going to think of wrapping them around as well as firmly pressing into the hands. So when you found that sort of lift of your sit bones as you enter the pose, think of those shoulder blades across your upper back, widen them. It's almost as if you're wrapping your armpits round towards your face. We're pressing into the whole palm of the hand, so trying not to take all the weight just into the part of the wrist that links with the little finger side of your hand. The whole palm of the hand pushes down, as if we're trying to press the crown of the head as far away from the mat as we can, really opening the armpits wide. Now, depending on your level of flexibility, mobility into your shoulders, I'm going to assume that most of us perhaps don't have particularly open shoulders, and therefore we want to think of pushing our chest back towards our legs to take away this sort of closed shoulder position and open them. If you're somebody with a great deal of shoulder flexibility and being able to take your arm up and overhead is no problem, for instance, maybe if you're hypermobile, you want to make sure you're not over egging that. So what we don't want to be doing is letting our shoulder blades squeeze together, our chest pushing so far back that we take this sort of dipping shape in the upper body. Not applicable to many of us, but maybe it's applicable to you. So what about our lower body? The bit that's maybe a little bit harder to get right. Important note, the legs do not need to be straight. The heels do not need to touch the floor. A really common misconception. People think heels should touch the floor in down dog. In a very flexible person, they may touch the floor, but it's not really the goal of the pose. You want your heels to be able to push towards the mat so that we're stretching the back of the legs, back of the calf, back of the hamstrings. But if they find the mat, they've suddenly got nowhere else to push to. So really, it's not somewhere that you should be striving to. So we'll come into it again, we'll find that tabletop, tuck toes, hips are up, I've got my upper body set, my shoulder blades are broad. So in the lower body, we want to keep a soft little bend in the knees. So this enables us to keep this long spine. Often if we force our legs to be straight, our lower back can't sort of cope with that, it can't be long enough, and then we start rounding. So soft bend in the knees, we'll still be able to stretch our legs with softly bent knees. Sit bones, those bony bits that you sit on, hence the name. Roll them up to the sky. That's called anterior tilt of your pelvis. Roll them up tall. Press those heels down and you should feel a stretch along the whole back line of the legs, hamstrings and calves. We're holding our belly in, so there's a little bit of core engagement. That's going to help that pelvis roll towards the sky. And the thighs, think of pushing backwards to the back of the room or back of the mat, depending on where you're situated. And the sit bones are widening into the sky, and that's going to really help open into the hamstrings as well. One final little thought is, where is our head? Where is our gaze? The head is relatively loose between the upper arms, so we're not sort of carrying any tension in the back of the neck. We're definitely not craning our neck forwards towards our fingertips. The gaze is maybe towards our toes, perhaps a little higher up towards our knees, just keeping that back of the neck nice and long with the rest of the spine. Depending on how new to yoga you are or how new to bodyweight exercises, you might not be able to hold a down dog for very long. It's a lot of strength into the shoulders, particularly if those shoulders are quite tight, because you're really fighting against your own flexibility. So holding it for as long as you can is a perfect way to build your strength and ability to do the pose. So depending on your own body's abilities, depending on where you find your struggles with your flexibility, a couple of things that might make down dog a little more accessible to you is to widen the hands. So traditionally they're as wide as the shoulders from that tabletop position. If you take them a little bit wider, it's less demanding on the need of the side body and the shoulders to find that full extension. So taking your hands to be about as wide as your mat will help those shoulders feel a little bit more comfortable, and as your range improves here, you can start to narrow them in. Same applies in the lower body. If you have very tight hips and you're struggling to find that lift, slightly widen your feet towards the edges of the mat. Might as well show you whilst I'm here. Take those feet a little bit wider, less demanding into the hip. And again, as you improve, you can start to bring those feet a little bit more narrow where they want to be, hip width apart. So hopefully that's busted some myths for you in how to do your down dog. I hope you find it helpful. Let me know in the comments below. I'll do some more of these tutorials, and you can find all of my tutorials in this playlist just here, and my most recent class where you can try out your down dog will be on this side here. Thanks for watching. I'd appreciate if you could give the video a little like if you found it helpful.